Part 1, Introduction. In today's fast-paced, pressured world, it's easy to fall victim to our own worries and anxieties, many of which arise from our own minds and not from reality. Stoic philosophy, developed by great thinkers such as Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus, offers us valuable tools to deal with these challenges. The Stoics teach us that one of the keys to living a peaceful life is knowing how to distinguish between what is real and what is a product of our imagination. Epictetus, one of the leading Stoic philosophers, reminds us, it is not things in themselves that trouble us, but the judgments we make about them. This fundamental principle invites us to reflect on how we react to events in our lives. When we let our minds create worst-case scenarios and amplify our fears, we lose control and distance ourselves from reality. The power lies in understanding that while we cannot control external events, we can always control how we interpret and react to them. Imagine yourself in a stressful situation, such as a problem at work or an argument with a friend. The mind, if not trained, tends to make catastrophic assumptions and dwell on irrelevant details. However, by adopting a Stoic approach, we can stop and ask ourselves, is this situation really as bad as it seems, or is my mind exaggerating the magnitude of the problem? This ability to pause and reflect is what allows us to separate reality from imagination, protecting our inner peace. In this series of reflections, we will explore how Stoic philosophy helps us better understand the nature of our emotions, build mental boundaries to protect our serenity, and seek support when needed. If you are looking for a new perspective to face everyday challenges, you are in the right place. Prepare to discover how the wisdom of the Stoics can guide you towards a more mindful and peaceful life. Part 2, The Power of Mind Control. One of the pillars of Stoic philosophy is the belief that true power lies in our ability to control our mind, rather than trying to control the outside world. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, clearly emphasizes this in his Thoughts. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This statement highlights that the key to maintaining inner peace is recognizing our ability to govern our reactions and thoughts, regardless of the circumstances. But what does it really mean to control the mind? It is not about repressing emotions or becoming insensitive to life's events, but rather about developing an awareness that allows us to respond with clarity and rationality. When we face difficult situations, such as dealing with a negative person or an unexpected event, our mind often reacts automatically, generating anxiety, fear, or anger. However, Stoicism teaches us to observe these thoughts and challenge them. Epictetus says, "What troubles men is not things, but the judgments they make about things." This means that our perception of events is often more damaging than the event itself. For example, if we receive criticism at work, our mind may lead to thoughts such as "I am not good enough," or "I will lose my job." These thoughts, even if they have no basis in fact, can cause unnecessary stress. Through Stoic practice, we can recognize these thoughts, analyze them, and decide not to let them affect our well-being. To exercise this mental control, it is essential to practice reflection and detachment. When an event threatens to disturb our serenity, we need to step back and ask ourselves, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, then our energy should be directed towards controlling our reaction. This is where the power of the internal declaration comes in, remembering that it is not the event itself that decides our state of mind, but how we choose to deal with it. I encourage each of you to apply this reflection in your daily life. When you feel overwhelmed, take a moment to breathe deeply and observe your thoughts. Challenge the negative ones and consciously decide how much mental space you want to give each one. This does not mean eliminating emotions altogether, but managing them so that you are not enslaved by them. As you practice this awareness, you will begin to notice a change in your ability to approach situations calmly and confidently. Remember, mind control is an art that requires patience and practice, but the benefits that come from it, such as inner peace and resilience, are priceless. You already have the power within you to master your mind. The first step is to recognize it and start practicing it every day. Part 3, Separating Reality and Fantasy. At the heart of Stoic philosophy, one of the fundamental ideas is the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is merely the fruit of our imagination. The Stoics teach us that much of the suffering we experience is caused not by the facts themselves, but but by the interpretations we make of those facts. It is through this lens that we learn to separate reality from our imagination. As Epictetus says, it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. This principle is at the heart of the Stoic concept of emotional distance. What we perceive as a threat or harm is often the result of a distorted vision, influenced by our fears, anxieties, or desires. Stoicism invites us to exercise mindfulness to separate the true from the false, the objective from the desired. Imagine, for example, a common situation: you receive criticism at work. Criticism itself is an objective fact, but the emotional reaction that arises from it depends on how we perceive it. If we think that criticism threatens our self-esteem or that it could compromise our future, then we are faced with a mental distortion. The reality is that criticism can be a tool for growth, a useful reflection for improving ourselves. But only when we are able to separate it from our imagination can we welcome it with serenity and learn from it. Another practical example concerns the fear of the future. Many of us, when thinking about tomorrow, feel overwhelmed by apocalyptic scenarios that could never come true. These fears are fueled by our imagination, not by concrete facts. The reality, however, is that none of us can predict exactly what will happen, much less can we control it. What we can control, however, is the way in which we prepare ourselves to handle the challenges that will come. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can do today, not on what could happen tomorrow. Distinguishing between reality and imagination also means being aware of our desires. Often, we idealize scenarios that seem ideal to us: a life without problems, a perfect career, relationships without conflicts. However, this is only a mental construction that does not correspond to reality. As Seneca reminds us, it is not life that is short, but we who make it so through our desires and worries. For the Stoics, the key to a peaceful life is to focus on what is possible and real, and to accept what we cannot change. This separation between reality and imagination does not mean ignoring our dreams or desires, but rather learning not to be slaves to them. Stoicism invites us to take a step back, observe our thoughts and ask ourselves, is this really true? Or is it just a projection of my mind? In this way, we can detach ourselves from our fears and illusions, and face life with greater clarity and determination. To put this distinction into practice, every time you find yourself reacting to an emotionally intense situation, try taking a step back. Ask yourself if the emotions you feel are the result of an objective fact or if they are the fruit of a mental interpretation. Take a moment to reflect on what is really in your control and what is not. Separating reality from imagination is an exercise in awareness that, over time, strengthens our serenity and emotional balance. Part 4: Building boundaries to protect your mind. One of the most powerful teachings in Stoic philosophy is the importance of protecting our mind from external influences that can threaten our inner peace. The Stoics urge us to build mental boundaries that allow us to filter out what is truly useful and necessary, and to reject anything that can upset us or distract us from our serenity. These boundaries are not rigid barriers, but tools of awareness that help us maintain control over our emotions and reactions. Epictetus reminds us that we cannot choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond. This principle of inner freedom is at the heart of the concept of mental boundaries. Our mind should not be an open space where any thought, emotion, or opinion can enter without restriction. Instead, we need to be aware of what we allow into our mind and how we choose to react to what happens in the outside world. Imagine being constantly exposed to negative news, strong opinions, and external stress. This information, even if it seems necessary or urgent, can easily overwhelm us and distract us from our emotional balance. The Stoics suggest that we filter these influences, welcoming only what is truly useful for our well-being and growth. This does not mean ignoring reality, but rather choosing not to be dragged by the chaos of the outside world. A practical example of how we can apply this idea in daily life concerns the use of social media. Social media is often a source of stress, fueling insecurities, envy, and worries. The Stoics invite us to reflect on how much of what we see online is truly useful for our development and whether this information contributes to our serenity. If we find that certain content or interactions make us feel disturbed or anxious, it is our duty to build mental boundaries to protect ourselves. We can, for example, limit the time we spend on social media or be more careful about the people and content we pay attention to. But mental boundaries are not just about what we let in, but also how we defend ourselves from external influences. Very often, we are influenced by the opinions of others, social judgment, or expectations that society imposes on us. The Stoics urge us not to allow these influences to threaten our inner peace. As Seneca said, he who lives according to his own nature does not worry about the disapproval of others. It is essential to learn to resist external pressures and remain true to our principles and values. Building mental boundaries also means learning to say no. Saying no to distractions, to demands that overload us, and to anything that takes us away from our goal of living a peaceful and virtuous life. Saying no is not an act of selfishness, but an act of protecting our energy and well-being. Only when we protect ourselves from these influences can we be truly free to focus on what matters most, our inner development and our peace of mind. Furthermore, it is important to recognize that not all emotions or situations are under our control. However, we can choose how we react to them. In this context, building mental boundaries also means learning to step back before reacting, reflect on what is truly in our power and what is not, and then choose a response that is in harmony with our Stoic principles. To put this concept into practice, try to identify everyday situations in which you feel overwhelmed or distracted. Ask yourself, is this situation under my control? If not, how can I protect my mind from it? Reflect on what boundaries you can build to protect your inner space and to stay centered in situations that disturb you. Building mental boundaries is an ongoing practice. It is not something that happens overnight, but rather a gradual process of awareness and self-discipline. Over time, these boundaries will become more and more natural and will help us maintain serenity, regardless of external circumstances. Part 5. The need to seek help and support. In Stoic philosophy, self-sufficiency is a core value. However, this does not mean that we must face every difficulty alone or that we must refuse the help of others. On the contrary, the Stoics teach us that, while we should try to be independent in our reactions and thinking, we should not hesitate to seek support when we need it. Seeking help, whether from others or through philosophical reflection, is an essential part of our journey to inner well-being. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, said, "No man is an island." With this quote, he emphasizes the importance of relationships and mutual support. Even the wisest of men, according to the Stoics, recognize that there are times when they need others to grow, reflect, or even simply find comfort. Loneliness and isolation are not the solution to overcoming emotional or mental difficulties. Instead, comparison with a wise mind or the support of trusted people can help us navigate the most difficult moments. Often, when we face challenges or stressful situations, we can fall into the trap of thinking that we have to handle everything alone. This can happen out of fear of appearing weak or vulnerable, or out of a mistaken belief that asking for help is a sign of failure. However, the Stoics remind us that asking for help is actually a form of wisdom, not weakness. Seeking advice and support allows us to see things from a different perspective, enriching our understanding and offering us solutions that we might not be able to see on our own. A practical example of how we can apply this principle in our daily lives concerns moments of mental or emotional difficulty. When we feel overwhelmed by worries or stress, it is important to recognize that we are not alone. We can seek help from friends, family, or qualified professionals such as therapists or counselors. The Stoics never refuse support that could be useful for their well-being, even if they tried not to be dependent on external circumstances for their inner balance. Furthermore, seeking support does not only mean asking for help directly from others. We can also seek wisdom by reading philosophical texts, listening to experts, or engaging in meaningful discussions with like-minded people. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor and Stoic philosopher, often turned to his writings and personal reflections to help him deal with life's challenges. But he also knew that listening to others and engaging in discussion helped sharpen his wisdom. However, to seek help effectively, it is essential to be open and willing to receive. Many of us may be afraid of appearing vulnerable or not being strong enough, yet this fear can prevent us from growing and improving. True courage is not in staying closed off and facing everything alone, but in recognizing when it is time to open up and accept the support that is offered to us. Even in the context of everyday difficulties, we can benefit from the support of those around us. By talking about our problems with a trusted person, we can lighten our emotional burden and gain new perspectives. Furthermore, the simple act of talking openly about our feelings can help us understand ourselves and our emotions better. Finally, it is important to remember that the support we seek does not always have to be external. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we can find great inner strength through reflection and self-examination. However, even in this case, dialogue with others, reading, and philosophical meditation can provide us with the tools to develop this strength. Therefore, seeking help and support is a fundamental aspect of our well-being. We must never feel that we have to face everything alone. Community, sharing, and the wisdom of others are precious resources that can guide us in difficult times and help us separate what is real from what is the fruit of our imagination or our fears. Party 6. Conclusion e concentrazione sulla pace interior. Alla fine di questo viaggio attraverso la filosofia stoica e l'importanza di separare la realtà dal nostra immaginazione e por cio che remain un concetto semplice ma potent, la ricerca della pace interior. Gli stoici ci insegnano che il nostro benessere non dipende dal circostanze esterne, ma da come reagiamo ad esse. E solo attraverso la consapevolezza e il controllo dei nostri pensieri e emozioni che possiamo raggiungere quella serenità che tutti noi desideriamo. Separare la realtà dalla nostra immaginazione significa essere in grado di affrontare la vita con maggiore lucidità, calma e resilienza. Come ci ricordava Epictetus, non sono le cose che ci turbano, ma le opinioni che abbiamo di esse. Questa semplice verità ci invita a riflettere su quanto spesso le nostre preoccupazioni derivano da pensieri distorti, por infondati o aspettative irrealistici. La realtà è cio che è, ma noi abbiamo il potere di scegliere come perceperla. L'autocontrollo, la disciplina mentale e la consapevolezza del nostre emozioni ci permettono di fare un passo indietro e vedere le cose per quello che sono, senza farsi travolgere dal nostre interpretazioni o illusioni. Vivere una vita stoica non significa vivere senza emozioni, ma piuttosto vivere in modo più consapevole delle emozioni e dei pensieri che ci attraversano. Significa scegliere di non essere schiavi delle nostre reazioni impulsive e imparare a rispondere con equilibrio e razionalità. Un percorso che richiede pazienza e pratica, ma con il tempo, possiamo sviluppare una forza interiore che ci permette di affrontare qualsiasi difficoltà con calma e determinazione. Raggiungere la pace interiore richiede un impegno continuo. Dobbiamo essere pronti ad affrontare le sfide quotidiane con un cuore aperto, ma anche con una mente ferma, che sa distinguere tra cio che possiamo controllare e cio che non possiamo. E, come abbiamo visto, non dobbiamo affrontare questo viaggio da soli. La filosofia stoica ci offre strumenti e strategie per mantenere il nostro equilibrio, ma la ricerca di supporto e il dialogo con gli altri sono altrettanto essenziali. Ora, voglio invitarti a riflettere su quanto questi principi stoici possano fare la differenza nella tua vita. Ti incoraggio a mettere in pratica cio che abbiamo esplorato oggi, a separare la realtà dal Tuesday por aspettative, e a concentrarti sulla costruzione di una pace interior duratura. Non è un percorso facile, ma è sicuramente un percorso che vale la pena intraprendere. Se ti è piaciuto questo video e vuoi continuare a esplorare la filosofia stoica e I suoi insegnamenti pratici, ti invito a iscriverti al mio canale. Troverai nuovi contenuti, approfondimenti e riflessioni che ti aiuteranno a vivere una vita più serena e consapevole. Non dimenticare di lasciare un like e condividere questo video con chi potrebbe trarne beneficio. Insieme, possiamo costruire una comunità di persone che cercano la pace interior e il benessere duraturo. Ti aspetto nel prossimo video, e ti auguro una giornata piena di serenità e consapevolezza.